Hey everyone, welcome back to Strange Mind 6. I'm your host Ruby, and today we're going to be reading more stories from the book of the bizarre, freaky facts and strange stories by Varla Ventura. Now, if you can, I would like to ask if you could please hit that like button and that subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me. And we're gonna get right into it. So if you guys want, grab a drink, grab a snack, or sit back and relax. And let's get to it. Dr. Death. Not all doctors put their patients' health at the top of their list of priorities. Dr. Harold Shipman was one such physician, a British general practitioner, who is said to have killed up to 250 of his patients in the 1990s. A friendly, well-liked doctor, Shipman had an easy way with his patients and had been practicing for many years. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until a colleague asked to co-sign many of his cremation orders. Noticed that his patients were dying in droves. She alerted the police, who, after some initial bungling, focused in on the death of Kathleen Grundy, an older woman who was found dead at her home in 1998. According to her will, Grundy had left all her money, the sizable sum of more than £350,000, to Shipman, ignoring her children and grandchildren entirely. Police exhumed Grundy's body and found traces of dimorphine, or heroin, in her system. According to her family and friends, Grundy had never used a drug in her life. Police seized Shipman's medical records and honed in on 15 similar cases for investigation. A pattern emerged. Shipman would administer a lethal dose of heroin, sign the death certificate, and then alter the medical records to indicate the patient was in poor health. In some cases, he would manipulate his victims into leaving him money. Oh, that's messed up. The doctor was brought to trial and sentenced to 15 consecutive life sentences for the 15 murders. Good. Though it was estimated that he took part in as many as 250 deaths. Wow. The next story is Black Widows. Black Widow is the slang term for women who use poison to kill their victims. People have used this silent but deadly method of murder for hundreds of years, but one of the better known Black Widows from modern times was Nanny Hazel Doss, also known as the Giggling Grandma, for her sweetly nervous disposition. Over the course of 34 years, Doss killed 11 of her family members, including four husbands and 2 children, using arsenic. Chapter 5. Coincidence or synchronicity? Odd things happen to ordinary folks. In the words of Albert Einstein, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. I just have to take a sip of coffee. Okay. Soul survivors. On December 5th, 1664, the first event in the greatest series of coincidences in history occurred. On this date, a ship in the Menai Strait off North Wales sank with 81 passengers on board. There was one survivor, a man named Hugh Williams. On the same date, in 1785, a ship sank in the Menai Strait with 60 passengers aboard. There was only one survivor, a man named Hugh Williams. On the very same date, in 1860, in the exact same area, a ship sank with 25 passengers on board. And the man who survived, you guessed it, was named Hugh Williams. Ouija magic. A wealthy Connecticut woman named Helen Dow Peck believed messages she received from Ouija boards. One day in 1919, the board spelled out that she should leave her entire estate to a man named John Gale. Forbes. That she did. The only problem was that she didn't know anybody by that name. In fact, after she died in 1956, her lawyer did a search throughout the world and discovered that despite what the all-knowing spirit had said, there was nobody by that name. Brotherly fate. In Bermuda, in 1975 and 1976, 2 brothers were killed in strikingly similar accidents. The first was riding a moped when he was struck and killed by a taxi. 1 year later, the man's brother, riding the same moped, was struck by the same taxi driver who had killed the first man, and the taxi was carrying the same passenger. Wow. Twin shipwrecks. In 1922, the Lyman Stewart was wrecked off the coast of Land's End, San Francisco's rockiest and most treacherous section of the coast. In 1937, the Frank Buck was wrecked on the exact same rock where the Lyman Stewart had gone down. The odd thing? Both ships were built as twin ships side by side in the shipyard of their origin. You can still see the ruins of the shipwrecks if you visit Land's End, now part of the Golden Gate National Park Conservancy. Take the stairs that lead from the Mary Way parking lot and head onto the coastal trail between the Vista Point and the Palace of the Legion of Honor. At low tide, you can often spot the Lyman Stewart's steam engine and the Frank Buck's stern post and steam engine sticking out of the water off the shore. The Threefold Law. In Louisville, Kentucky, 3 family members died in the same spot on separate days. A woman was hit by a car, an accident that she survived, but that killed her 6-week-old daughter. A few years later, the same woman was killed about 2 blocks away as she jumped from a moving vehicle for an undisclosed reason. But the cruel coincidence continued when 20 years later, the woman's 19-year-old son died on the same street when his motorcycle hit a car full of college students. The old switcheroo. Irv Kupcinet experienced a rare kind of synchronicity. While covering the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in London in 1953, he found items in a hotel room drawer that were identified as those of Harry Hannon. Hannon, widely known as a Harlem Globetrotter, was actually a good friend of Kupcinet's. Just a few short days later, Kupcinet received a letter from Hannon. In the letter, Hannon explained that he had been in a hotel room in Paris and found a tie in a drawer that had Kupcinet's name on it. Coincidence or justice? A man attempting to rob a convenience store in Cherryville, North Carolina, thwarted his own plans when he dropped the gun. The gun hit the ground, went off, and the bullet went into the man's foot. Yeah, that was justice. Heart attack. In Rome, an Italian who was charged with killing his American girlfriend after having kidnapped their daughter died of a heart attack while testifying in court during his trial. Family members and friends claimed that he had threatened to kill her many times, and they were convinced he was guilty. Perhaps divine justice played a role in his eventual death. Well, there's a plane going by. I apologize, you guys. Just gonna let it pass. Now, the next one is a message in a bottle. According to the Journal Times of Racine, Wisconsin, there is new evidence that destiny plays a role in love. On August 18, 2007, a young couple, Melody Kloska and Matt Burrs, tied the knot in a simple ceremony at the Wind Point Lighthouse in Ranson. After the ceremony, they tossed a bottle containing their wedding vows into the cool blue waters of Lake Michigan. Just a few weeks later, the newlyweds received a divine sign that they were meant to be. A letter arrived from Fred and Lynette Dubendorf, who had found the bottle while walking on a beach in Pentwater, Michigan, located on the other side of Lake Michigan. The letter explained that the Dubendorfs discovered the bottle on the very beach where they had been married 28 years before. Not only that, but that the Dubendorfs had been married on August 18th, 1979. Wow, the same day and everything. A Child's Story. Anne Parrish, famed American novelist who wrote dozens of award-winning books from the 1920s through the 1950s, was one day browsing through books in a Parisian bookstore. She found a book that had always been a favorite of hers, Jack Frost and Other Stories. Delighted to find a memory from her childhood, she was shocked to discover that the inscription within contains her own name and the address of her childhood home in Colorado. Double Death. In Germany, in the late 1970s, a story hit all the newspapers, television, and radio stations. A story that contains one of the most tragic examples of synchronicity to date. A man was walking along the country road at night when a car struck him from behind and killed him. 1 year from the day he died, the man's twin brother went for a walk at the same spot in memory of his departed brother. As it turned out, the driver of the car that hit and killed the first man had also had a twin brother. The driver's twin brother decided to drive along the same road in memory of his own departed brother. He hit and killed the twin brother of the pedestrian, recreating a scene that has shocked everyone who has heard the story. Paw Paw Tragedy. According to the Detroit Free Press, in February of 2007, in the Paw Paw Township, Michigan, 2 brothers were killed in a head-on collision with each other. The brothers, ages 24 and 33, shared a home. The elder brother lost control of his vehicle and crossed into the path of his brother's oncoming car. They were both pronounced dead at the scene. Wow. Destined to Love. This is the story of John and Martha O'Brien, originally told to Phil Quasinio. Apologize if I'm saying that wrong. For his book, Coincidence or Destiny. In 1989, a group of people from around the United States gathered in Paris to participate in a Bohemian Paris art and literature tour. On the 3rd day of the tour, Martha Fletcher, a dancer from San Francisco, met John O'Brien, an artist from Greenwich Village, on a houseboat that rested on the Seine near the Pont d'Alma, in front of the Eiffel Tower. The two hit it off, but at the end of the tour, they returned to their respective homes. It wasn't until several months later, when Martha was moving into a new home, that she realized that a photograph she had kept on her bulletin board since grade school, which was a painting of a houseboat on the Seine at Pont d'Alma, and the Eiffel Tower was in the background. A few minutes later, John moved to San Francisco for the summer. With him, he brought a painting he had painted 10 years before of a ballerina with long red hair. The dancer looked exactly like Martha. It was no surprise that the following summer the pair returned to Paris, John painting and Martha dancing. They spent a day in Moret-sur-Loing, a charming little village outside of Paris. At the end of summer, however, they again parted, only this time John was returning to New York to move out to California permanently. As he was packing his things, he too came upon an old photo that he had kept for years. It was a photo of a painting of the little town of Moret-sur-Loing. 1 year later, Martha and John married. 1 year later after that, Martha was sorting through old boxes to make room for a nursery, and she happened upon a diary she had written when she was 12. As she browsed through the pages, one line in particular stood out. "I wish I could be Michelle O'Brien." Michelle O'Brien was a ballet dancer that Martha had admired as a youth. 2 months later, Martha gave birth to their daughter, Michelle O'Brien. Now that was a nice story. And with that, my dear friends, we're going to actually end it. I know it's very short, but we're going to end the video for now. Tune in next time. And this is Ruby signing off.